You keep scrolling through all this content that you hate. Why? Media that's a modern poo pile that you know will frustrate, bore, and lessen your opinion of modern art. You know all this, but you still sit there and click your little Netflix button, push your little YouTube thumbnail, and install your little 700 terabyte nightmare of a COD update, and run off and watch and play your life away. Sometimes you even make it all the way through these toilet flush temptations. And why? Why do you keep falling into these dreaded dung traps? Well, the good news is, in the time it takes me to beat the pants off this gold-ranked team in Rivals, I'm going to explain to you why you're stuck in this phenomenon, and best of all, how I was able to stop consuming media and become a creative genius. Maybe some of my head swelling can rub off on you as well. Things really started firing up for me in about 2015 or so, and I can't remember the particularly forgetful piece of media that I just digested, but it sucked. And it was just another sucky piece of media to add to my growing pile of dreadful media that I'd regretfully just consumed. It drove me to dig out some story that I had written in high school, and I dedicated myself to finishing that story, because I could do way better than what was out in the world at the time in 2015. 2015 would be the year that story finally blessed the light of day. But first, I gotta watch Attack on Titan, that show that everybody's been talking about. Oh, and that new Dragon Ball Super movie just came out too. And all my friends keep talking about these games, Life is Strange and Until Dawn. And well, now it's 2017, and my poor little high school story is no more complete than it was back in 2015. And I swore I would complete it. But there is something special in the water in 2017. I can remember walking away from my movie after movie, Stranger Things clone after Stranger Things clone, with just one thought on my mind. I could do better. There it was again. That's a thought that many of us have after consuming media, right? Right? Or at least I assumed that's what everyone thought, since after all that's how my mind has always worked. Drop me a comment on whether or not your mind does this too, or if it's totally just a me thing. It's those same thoughts that drove me to dust off my old high school manuscript just 2 years ago in 2015. And maybe it's just the creative in me dying to burst out, but it was becoming a chronic and overwhelming thing. I'd just finished a particularly bland media meal, the flavor of the day, season 1 of Riverdale, and it was after that mixed bag that a way to morph my beloved high school story began to manifest itself. I was going to take the good stuff from Riverdale, mix in the characters and supernatural elements from Stranger Things, throw in 13 Reasons Why somehow, then add a hefty dose of my own creativity, get that turned into a Netflix series, and then boom, I'm a millionaire world-famous writer. Spoiler alert, my pen name is LL Smith, and I guarantee none of you have heard of me. But you know what? That pipe dream, as rose-colored as it was, did one very important thing for me. It got me writing. For the first time in 2 years since I decided to finish that story, did I actually start putting my fingers to the keyboard and get that sucker out of my head. For so many of us, that first step of just putting thoughts to paper is honestly the hardest. So many wish in one hand and consume in the other, and I don't have to tell you which will fill up faster. But I was getting there, every cringy detail at a time. I really had no idea what I was doing, and that was just another roadblock that had managed to stop me on so many prior occasions. So why then? Why was this time different? There can be so many reasons as to why this was the magical moment. Perhaps there was nothing bad enough left on TV to watch. Maybe my mind's filter was full of the amount of junk it could stand to consume. There's always a chance that this idea was just so grand that it leapt right out of my brain and forced itself onto the page. I can't be certain as to the exact formula, but one thing was certain. I was writing, and I had, for the first time since I still can't remember when, I had stopped consuming. And when I was no longer spending hours staring at Veronica Lodge, all of a sudden, I had all this time to write the stuff that I wanted to write. Go figure. But the fact remains that I had no idea what I was doing. In terms of writing, in terms of making a novel, in terms of, well, anything really. And I got news for you. All of our first go-arounds will be like that, and that's okay. If we're ever gonna do it, then we all need to dive into something. Don't let your imposter syndrome dive you deeper into a sinkhole of never-ending consumption. Trust me, that's a dark place with no duty paper. That big old chunk of a project took another 2 years to finish. It had taken 2 years just to seriously decide to write the thing, and then another 2 years to actually write the thing. It was 2019, and my 24-year-old self was mortified at the idea that I just spent 4 years on a single project. It was done, and now what? I'd need to have the thing edited. I couldn't submit this slop pile to Netflix and expect them to see how it was the next world-breaking Netflix exclusive, not in its current condition at least. I couldn't help but wonder if that'd be another 2-year process. That puts this dang thing at 6 years total. And I don't care who you are, that's a big old chunk of time. But I'd gotten this far, and I'd be gosh darned if I didn't finish the dang thing. So, if only for the sake of saying that I did, I committed to having this slop pile edited and published. My editor was a nice enough older lady, very English teachery. She was local, and so we could meet up at a local coffee shop. It was a memory as poignant as the coffee we sipped every Sunday morning. Except the scripture was something I'd written, and me and my editor seemed to be the only two people who really cared about it. There was a record store across from that coffee shop, and my favorite local donut shop was right next door. Both are gone now, but I spent stupid money every Sunday on those passion pits, and my life was entrancing me into a steeper high than any drug could ever hope to hold a candle to. But it wasn't all chocolate donuts, vintage records, and white chocolate mochas. This was the first time I'd been given the most derailing of advice. Like a big old iron bull ramming right into the side of the train. Read, my editor said. You should read more. Reading is writing, and you should read more to learn others' crafts. See what they do that you like, and see what doesn't quite work. It was harmless enough advice, and is honestly very common in the writing space. And although it does hold some merit, it must always be told with a strong disclaimer. You see what my editor had just invited me to do, she being the closest thing I knew to an industry professional at the time, and someone whose advice I trusted as close to my heart as a word from my kindergarten bestie. But this seemingly innocent advice plunged me and my project into months of unproductivity and delays. Pushed the whole thing back by 9 months easy. You see, she just opened the doors wide open for consumption again. I had shut this part of me off that craved this malarkey. And I recognized and appreciated just how much I'd accomplished by doing so. But she said that's what I had to do. And she was my industry professional after all, and she knew how I was going to get my Netflix deal. I went through the classics, George Orwell's 1984, something more modern, Leigh Bardugo's Six of Crows. I read nonfiction books on writing advice. I read bad books that'd teach me what not to do. Here's to looking at you, Twilight. I DNF, BT dubs. But eventually, after I'd read a bunch, I realized something. Something that made too much sense to me at the time. All my concepts for this novel had come from TV. So I should really go back to TV if I was going to truly be inspired to learn something that had helped my book. That's the place to be, right? Right? Hello Stranger Things, season whatever, 13 Reasons Dumb, and Riverdale's D&D simulator? Thank goodness that all those shows that I'd been inspired by were all having an off year in 2019. I got the ick faster than reading about a Diddy party and was sent right back to my own story. All joking aside, I got real lucky that I was able to rediscipline myself and reestablish my habits. Otherwise, I would have fallen right back into that trap of consumption and could have very well wound up still working on that dang book today, a whole decade later. Which would have been just another trap to lead me to another fate all too common among aspiring new creatives. That's right, good old consumption. So I reconnected with my editor after having ghosted her for like months to go back to binging and consuming mindless media again. I'd learned not to take her advice verbatim, and I think it's important to point out that she wasn't suggesting I consume more books as some grand gesture of sabotage. She was truly trying to help me in the best way she knew how. She was no industry expert, nor did she ever claim to be or conduct herself as such a thing. Though I had thrusted that title upon her because I needed to know someone who I could assign that title to. After a good solid lesson, we were back to work and I was back to dumping hundreds of dollars into local businesses every Sunday. We banged out that book and had it ready for publishing by early 2020. I would release it out to the world early that same year. And I haven't binged watched the show since. I still watch and enjoy things, but I set clear limits to my consumption, and even clearer expectations of myself day to day for my creative projects. I write 1 hour a day, at least, and as soon as I get home. I don't allow myself to make dinner until I've finished my writing for the day. It's a valuable little mind game that I play with myself, to play as though I'd starve myself if I didn't get my writing done. It's a silly practice, but has worked great in action. I've released 5 more books since 2020, and I've gotten the process down to like 9 months. Pregnant women, eat your heart out. I can write books just as fast as you can make babies. The moral of this story, if such a thing even exists, is to avoid consumption. Surprise, surprise, right? Especially excessive consumption. Watching some shows to unwind for the day or whatever is fine, but if you have something to do, somewhere to be, or someone to show up for, then click out of your little Netflix thing, put down the phone, and power down the video game machine. Get out there and do it. I hate to get all Shia LaBeouf or Nike on you, but it really is that simple. Just do it! Do it! And I also don't want to sound like that guy who's giving advice as harsh as just shut everything off and go off the grid. That advice seems all too common around here these days as well. The people who cold turkey pull media entirely out of their lives, no more video games ever, no more TV ever, that works for them, and that's great for them. They like to satanify TV and video games, but TV and video games are something that I legitimately enjoy. I don't want to pull that enjoyment from my life entirely, I just want to control it a little better. To quote the late and great Barry White, "Too much of anything is no good for you, babe." But up and dumping something that you enjoy so much and that has become a part of your identity can be just as damaging. So I want to set it clear that I'm not up here on my podium preaching the devil into video games and movies.
Your children need to know there's a devil and he hates them and he wants to ruin their life.
I'm just saying to learn to control your consumption, especially if you got a dream that you're going to turn into a reality. Media is designed now more than ever to be just as easy to consume as the act of just sitting down. Showrunners have admitted to making shows that are more thoughtless and can be casually consumed so that their shows can exist in your life without effort, or just in the background of everyday life. An ideology that focuses on consumption over quality, and a trap that even the wisest of doctors have fallen into. An ideology that sucks the very life and soul from art. You know, for years I blamed the impassionate bunch for the downfall of modern art. Those who have never bought a movie in their life, only listen to music through the radio, and stick to games when they're at a friend's house. And don't get me wrong, these uncultured swine poison the market in their own unique and special way, but we passionate few cannot be absolved from the guilt either. Another great man once said, if you want to make a change, you gotta start with the man in the mirror. We claim to hate and loathe all this crap media, but we consume it all the same. We watch it for the sake of reviewing it on our socials and getting more attention, which in turn gets it more attention too. We watch it because we want to form our own well-educated opinions. We watch it because that's what our little Netflix finger chose to watch that day. Blind and thoughtless consumption is the cancer that kills our media, and any sort of attention, good, bad, or ugly, only serves to elevate that product. To ignore something in today's market is to do the most damage. The media machine runs on money, and there's no money when people aren't around. So stop being around for the media that you hate and wish would just go away. Because, and hear me out for a minute on this one, if you aren't around the stuff that you want to go away, then it will go away, one way or the other. Don't get me wrong, my book is far from the next of Mice and Men, and will probably never see the light of day as a Netflix exclusive. I mean, just look at the source material, lol. But it opened a door for me. Opened a door for future books that enhance my craft with each new word. A door that leads to a more productive life and a better sense of holistic completion with this life. Since then, I've built my own house with my own 2 hands, written 6 books and counting, and started a cartoon here on YouTube. I've done plenty to be proud of, and I'm just getting started. But that first step was turning off the Netflix machine and committing to doing the things. You don't have to delete consumption from your life entirely as others would suggest. You don't even have to remove it as aggressively as I have, but you will have to find a healthier balance in life and avoid the trap society has set for us. Learning to control your consumption will get you there. Only consume when you're making a conscious effort to do so, and only consume what you actually want to consume. I know, it's a wild thought, right? I'm telling people to only watch the things that they actually want to watch. But there's so many zombie people out there consuming for the sake of killing their waking hours, and not because they have any sort of actual interest in whatever it is they're consuming. You can get it done out there, and it all starts with controlling and ending your consumption. For me, being irritated with consuming modern media was my biggest blessing. I hope that you can find a similar moment to my I hate consuming media and can do it so much better moment. The first book I reference in this story a lot is The Expedition of Hope, which is available on Amazon. If you'd be so kind as to give it a read, I'd be forever grateful. I've got the link in my bio, though I would suggest starting with something like Dusty Little Wastelanders or later, as those novels feature some of my strongest writing yet. I write my own novels and have my own animation here on YouTube. If you want to support me, go and check them out. That'd really mean the world to me. Now go out there, stop consuming, and start some changes today, bud.